I just want to start by saying no one's okay. Welcome back.
Oh my gosh. Welcome back to Collectively Unhinged, right? That's what we're just going to say today, right? That this is the podcast for anybody of you who have already listened to our first 3 episodes out there. Thanks for listening. We hope you got some enjoyment out of it so far. We definitely deviated the last 2 episodes because it was Mother's Day. We had a lot on our mind and we just wanted to talk about it. So now we're going to try to get a little bit back on track with what originally was supposed to be our second episode. And that is grad school versus real life, what they didn't teach us. And again, once again, my name is Courtney Vargas. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, your co-host. And with me is, drum roll, please.
Oh, it's not a drum at all. My name is Melissa. I am also a licensed, well, not also, I am just a licensed mental health therapist. Courtney is something different. Obviously, I'm a little out of it today. We're going to make it through.
Just a little bit?
We're going to get through our podcast.
Just a little bit?
Oh, not enough coffee. Okay, so let's talk about what they didn't teach us in grad school, which actually I feel like is a whole lot. I don't know if you agree with that, Courtney.
Yes, that is to sum up our podcast right there in a few seconds. Not a whole lot. Yeah. No, honestly, I think we could spend quite a bit of time talking about this to be completely honest. But no, we're gonna try and shorten this so that we're not keeping you here for several hours. Maybe some of you would enjoy that regardless, but we're not gonna do that to you guys today. And yeah, so there's a lot that I think that was not really taught that much outside of just, the regular what to expect from education and learning the different psychological theories of personality and whatnot, mental health diagnoses, like all that good stuff that you learn when you go to school. But outside of that, I think that there's a lot that was not really discussed so much in sort of what the expectations look like for real life. So that's kind of what we wanted to talk about here today. In a sense, grad school gives you the theories, right? But real life is more so about, okay, now what the hell do I do now when these people are coming to me with these issues? So let's start with our first segment, right? Our expectations versus reality. What, Melissa, did you feel like therapy or like going into practice was going to look like for you? What were your expectations when you were getting ready to graduate?
So I want to start with this. I remember in grad school, they made us do, you had this, a 5-minute, it was a few videos, but it was a 5-minute video where you had to sit there and fake talk to somebody. And I just remember being so horrifying. They played this video in front of the entire class. And the main thing was, don't ask questions, just give reflection, feedback, empathy. And girl, when I tell you I was so sweaty, it felt like the hardest thing in the world. And now I think about it and I'm like, I cannot believe that was a thing. I feel like I could talk to people for hours and obviously you ask questions in therapy sessions, but it is a lot of reflection and feedback and providing support in a lot of different ways and giving psychoeducation. And so, man, I think back to baby therapist me, and I'm like, oh man, coming straight out of grad school, if I had anybody for therapy straight out of grad school, I am sorry. I am a different therapist now than I was back then, for sure.
Oh my gosh, so true.
Yeah, you pick up on things along the way for sure and gain experience. But to answer that question, I'm not really sure what I thought therapy was going to be like. I think I had more of the expectation that I would be, I don't know, that maybe there would be breakthroughs every session and that it would be constant, focusing on a specific theory. They talk about what type of therapist do you want to be and what theory do you want to focus on? And sometimes in sessions, I catch myself pulling bits and pieces from all these different things. And I'm like, this is my own theory because we are using 1,000 different things that I've learned along the way. And that seems to be helpful. So I think I expected it to have more structure where therapy doesn't need, actually, most people prefer for it to not have that structure. I don't know if you agree with that.
No, I think I can 1,000% relate. And I think it was also to my detriment as well. I remember, I loved my professors that I had in school, but I remember this one particular professor. She had said something that stuck with me for so many years during school and outside of it. And she said that every single question, every single thing that you say to your client has to be theory based. It has to be with the thought of the theory that you are practicing in mind, right? And then I would become so hyper aware of what I was talking about, and I would be like so focused on how I was going to respond to what they were saying, instead of sometimes like actually really focusing on what they were saying and just like let it be natural. And we did like mock therapy sessions, mock group sessions, things like that in school. And then when I did my practicum, we had to video record our session so that the teacher and the entire class could listen to this. So I was so hyper aware of how I had to conduct the sessions, because I knew the teacher was listening. I knew the students were listening. I knew that they were going to like have my theory in mind of what I was practicing, which was at the time structural family therapy. And I knew that every single thing that I said had to be within the focus of structural family therapy. Like I could not deviate from it. I had to put that completely in mind, every single thing that I said. And as the years went, I understood that the reality of it was like, that's just not something that comes completely natural. I love the foundation of structural family therapy, and I still practice aspects of that, but that's not all that there is now, right? Like there's so many different theories, there's so many different ideologies that can work with who you are seeing, and some work better than others. But it was just that I didn't have to be so structured. I came to realize that the expectation was probably that, but the reality was I didn't have to be so structured. I could be more natural. I could be more free flowing. I could talk about what was on my mind, knowing that I had this knowledge as my foundation.
So, yeah, absolutely. And you know what's interesting is I've actually had people tell me like, I don't want so much psychoeducation. Like, I just want a vent, and I want you to tell me if I'm just super off and what I should do about it. So it really depends on the person. Like, sometimes people,
For sure.
yeah, sometimes people tell me like, no, I want you to give me like these tools and skills. So I don't know. I think school just really like set me up to think like similar to what you're saying, right? Like there has to be like purpose and meaning and deep insight behind every single thing you say. And then you're absolutely right. You get more caught up on what am I going to say next? What do I say to this person?
Yep.
I don't know how to handle this. And then just all the anxiety builds. And then they look at you because they're done talking and you're like, oh my God, what did they just say? And you're like, yeah, no, that's hard. And you're like, okay, maybe I should just listen. And actually like respond. And I'm pretty sure I read this like a while ago. I obviously didn't follow up on like the validity of it, but there, from what I understand, is research that shows that like the relationship you have with your client is more beneficial than like even implementing that structure. So like if your client feels supported and understood and validated and they don't feel judged, like that is going to help them achieve their goals much more than if you're just like stoic, like let's talk about the next step in our therapy session because we are now in phase 2. And like, if that works for you, I think that's wonderful. But I have heard a lot of people be like, I want to feel like I can relate to my therapist. Like, I don't want you to feel like you're a robot that doesn't like have insight into what life is actually like.
True. 1,000%. And again, I said this earlier, their grad school is very much, it gives you the theories, right? And I felt like I had this expectation that I could just focus on therapy, right? I can focus on the assessments, maybe the diagnoses, the diagnoses, however you say that, whatever. I could focus on just like doing my sessions, practicing and helping these people through whatever it is that they're coming to therapy for. that was the expectation. And when I'm like, okay, I'm going to graduate and I'm just going to start therapy. And like that is what it is. But the reality that, again, I don't feel like school really spoke so much about was more so the whole other aspect of it, of how certain things even get into place or how you even proceed with like ongoing sessions. So like what I mean by that is insurance, cancellations, how they're, especially with insurance, how sometimes you have like you have to have a certain format to it of like Medicaid, for example. I used to work for a nonprofit, and it was like certain things where you can only have 12 sessions and be able to complete everything you need to do within those 12 sessions. Or it was then people dealing with co-pays or deductibles, and then them talking about that in therapy that had nothing to necessarily do with what they were coming to therapy for. But it is a concern, right, that some people might have that they have to then deal with, and they bring that to you to also help them with as well. Or then cancellations. And I don't feel like I had any sort of reality or realistic expectations when it came to that. I definitely never thought about that once during grad school. And I feel like that was a huge reality check for me that I didn't feel so prepared for. What about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yes, you don't hear about that at all. I think that maybe the expectation is that you learn about that like once you like actually take off with your career. But I don't know, it's kind of like the conversation of like, do I want to learn how to find the circumference of a circle, or do I want to learn how to do my taxes? I just wish that they would have like prepared us for some of that too, right? Just have like a side class where it's like
A business
super
class.
optional. Yeah, super optional. Do you want to go into private practice? Which maybe they don't focus on it as much, because I don't know. I almost wish I knew the percentages like going into this podcast. I don't know what the percentage looks like of therapists that find jobs within like other fields and therapists that actually go into private practice. Because you hear it a lot, at least I do, from therapists where they're like, going into private practice, like it's not stable income because of the cancellations, because of insurances, because people don't do self-pay. Because it's just expensive, right? It's expensive to pay so much out of pocket for therapy. So a lot of people understandably decide to go into like different settings where you have like a set paycheck. So maybe that's why for us, we have like a different perspective on it, because we're like, why didn't anybody get us set up for private practice? And it's like, well, most people aren't really necessarily going into private practice.
Yeah, that I completely agree. I think again, I think there's like a whole aspect of when you go into school and they give you all these different ideas of what therapy could look like, but in the lens of working with a client, but not within the lens of like how you actually make a living off of it, right? Like the business aspect of therapy. Do you want to go into nonprofit? Do you want to go into private practice? If you go into private practice, do you want to work for another private practice? Do you want to have your own? There's so many different aspects of it that I don't think that they really set you up for. I will say, just as kind of like a side note, since we are talking about this, Melissa and we do consultations for grad students, for therapists out there. If anybody is ever interested in, maybe just getting some insight. We have been in the field for 10 years, I think. It's about be 10 years for me. Melissa, I don't know how long it's been for you. It's been longer, I feel like, in comparison. But we do provide consultations. You can check us out on our website, strongmindmh.com, just to see if there's any sort of thing that maybe you could use that help from fellow therapists that have their own private practice. And again, I've worked in nonprofit as well. Melissa's worked in nonprofit. So we have the perspective of both to be able to help you out if you feel like you need that. So again, I went out of school and I was like, okay, I'm just going to apply wherever, and whoever is like the first person to hire me is where I'm going to go. Again, it ended up being a nonprofit. I stayed with them for 4 years and understood like the Medicaid aspect of it, which again, I'm like, okay, what's Medicaid? Who like help me understand? Okay, that sounded so bad when I said that, but like help me understand how, I say that in the sense of like, help me understand how that relates to therapy. Like, why is that an aspect of therapy that I even need to worry about? And again, so much came from that understanding of no, therapy is not just in the sense of like what you practice there with the client one-on-one, but also like maybe there's a set number of sessions you have to do with them, and that maybe Medicaid wants to audit all of your files that and in regards to this client, like there's just so much that I don't feel like was really understood at that time. So I think maybe we can move on from there to like our next segment, the biggest shocks, the kind of the biggest what the fuck sort of moments when you started working as a therapist. We talked about what the expectations were and then maybe what the reality of that looked like. But like, were there just certain things with even going into the business, even doing whatever you were doing that you were just like, okay, what the hell is this? And what did I get myself into? Do you have anything like that?
I mean, honestly, like you were talking about insurances, for me, the biggest what the fuck moment was calling insurances repeatedly and speaking to different people over and over and getting a different response every time about the same issue, and then being told absolutely the issue is fixed, don't worry, and then a few days later saying that the issue is absolutely not even close to being fixed. I was like, I think I would call you and be like, Courtney, is this real life? Like, am I losing my mind? I'm gonna lose it. So that was really overwhelming and stressful for sure. But honestly, I feel like maybe the biggest like what the fuck moments for me were probably working at a Lotus house where we both worked.
Oh my gosh.
Just because, you know, it's the population is very different, right? When you're in private practice, like you have people that for the most part want to be in therapy, want to achieve their goals, like are very much like proactive. You know, Lotus House is a homeless shelter. They do a lot of really great things, but one of them is that, like, of course, like some people should be in therapy. A lot of those people, not all of them, but a lot of them really did not want to be in therapy. So it's challenging, right? It's challenging to like motivate somebody who is like angry that they're sitting in therapy looking at your face and you're just like, hi, let's talk about your stuff. And they're like, I literally want to punch you in the face. And you're like, okay, great. Have a good day. So I feel like those were definitely like the hardest moments. And then just coming across people that like lack complete and total insight into what they have going on, right? That's always like my favorite. It's a kind of a challenge where they're like saying all these things and you're like, do you see how what you're saying doesn't match what you're doing? And they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And you're like, all right, let's take it from the top. I don't know about you though.
So I have kind of like a little bit of an interesting one. I was like a newbie therapist in nonprofit, and you know, my background is marriage and family therapy. So like I worked a lot with families and children at the time. And I had this teenager that he was coming in for behavioral issues. The parents were like, you know, it seems like maybe he has some like ADHD tendencies. He acts out. He has behavioral things. He's not doing well in school, whatever. It seemed like pretty basic, not anything too much. So I was working with this kid for 6 months, Melissa. 6 months I was working with him. Everything seemed pretty straightforward, pretty standard. We were building great rapport together, and I'm still looking at things through like the structural family therapy lens of what I'm trying to work with him on. And it took 6 freaking months for then this kid to finally randomly, and I remember this session to this day, randomly to tell me that he was hearing voices. He had like these demons that were literally sitting on his shoulders that he could see and feel and touch right now, that were like talking to him and like, you know, like it was like the classic sort of, you know, audio and visual hallucinations that he was mentioning. And I was so shocked because it was so freaking unexpected. And I remember saying in my head, like, what the fuck is this? And what do I do with this now? I'm like, I felt so completely unprepared, so completely like, I've been working with you for 6 months and you're like randomly telling me this now. And then he's like, yeah. And then he's telling me how his person or his thing is telling me hi and wants to talk to me. And I was like, okay. And so like, I was honest. I was like, okay, look, I need you to give me a minute. Okay. Just give me a minute. I'm going to take a very quick break and then I'll come right back. And I ran to my supervisor because I was like, what am I doing? I ran to my supervisor. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I was completely shocked. And granted, like, I was very new in this. This was like my first year working. And then like she helped calm me down and like work through things with me. And like I went back and talked to him, and we finished our session and whatnot. But I just remember feeling so unprepared. So what the fuck was that? And being like, that was real. Like, that was real. Like, it took this kid 6 months to open up and tell me this. And he told me, he's like, yeah, I didn't know how you were going to react to it. So I didn't want to tell you. But it took him 6 months to open up to me about that. And I think it just like completely shocked me in really understanding that the dynamic of therapy and how we understand it can be like so different sometimes than maybe like not only what the expectation was in school, but also like how a person presents when they first come in and whatnot. So that was a crazy experience for me. I would also say that when we got more into virtual, especially after COVID and everything became virtual after that, and people started to do therapy from the comfort of their homes, that was also kind of a big WTF, what the fuck moment for me, because like there were some people that were like really getting comfortable in their sessions, and I was not prepared for that either, right? Like I had some people show up half naked. I've had some people like I had one person that was like wasn't aware that their back screen of their office was open, and they had like this one person walking by half naked, like dancing to music or whatever, completely unexpected. That was crazy. I had another person even just recently like pop out her boob to breastfeed her kid and whatnot. And I mean, granted, she like had asked me before, but I didn't really understand what she was saying because she wasn't directly addressing that. She was just like, oh, is it okay if I feed my kid, sort of thing, not mentioning how she was going to feed her kid, but just if she could feed her kid. And of course I was like, yeah, that's totally fine. And she's over here popping out her breast and breastfeeding her kid, which I was fine with, but it was, again, totally unexpected, right? So I feel like sometimes even with telehealth, that became a whole other thing in and of itself.
Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong. Telehealth is interesting for sure. I'm guilty of it on the opposite end. I do tell when I was breastfeeding my daughter, I did tell my clients, I'd be like, hey, I'm breastfeeding right now. Are you okay with that? And they would be like, oh yeah. I don't know if anybody lied to me and were like afterwards like, yo, my crazy ass therapist was breastfeeding during the session. I would also pump during the session. I mean, it's tough. You're like on a schedule, right? So I would like sit there and be like, hey, if you see me looking down, I'm just setting up the breast pump. And people would be like, solid, don't worry about it.
Yeah, but you see, you were, that was like cut off. Like they couldn't see you actually doing that.
No.
No, what I'm talking.
Imagine I just pop out my boobs. Like
no, that's what I'm talking about, Melissa. Like she popped out her boob. I could see everything. And she's like breastfeeding her kid. Mind you, I didn't care one bit, but it was it was just so unexpected for me in that moment. Like you have to understand, like for any people listening out there, Melissa and I, we worked at a homeless shelter, right? Like you saw people walking around half naked or fully naked all the time. Like it was nothing to me whatsoever to see that happening. It was just so unexpected in that moment, to have that happening. But one day I think we need to have an episode about the life at the homeless shelter. I don't know how much they would like that, but I think we should do it. Talk about what that really like.
They would hate it, but I have so many stories. I'm sure you do too. Like the pure insanity that would happen at that homeless shelter on a daily basis was just, man, we do have to have an episode about that. That's going to be our most viewed episode for sure.
Oh my gosh, for sure.
I wanted to go back though, because you mentioned something, which I'm glad you ran out of the room to find your supervisor when you didn't know what to do. But this poor kid was like, it took me, I wonder what the thoughts were when he was like, it took me 6 months to tell this therapist this, and now she has run out of the room. I have shocked her so much that she
I had to be real. I had to be real about that. I wasn't going to stay there and like possibly do more to like hurt him. I had to be real with where I was at. And I was not in a place where I could even say anything to him about it. And I was completely upfront with him in the sense I was like, look, I definitely wasn't expecting that at all, but I'm really happy that you felt safe to discuss with me. And he did open up more about the fact that he had been judged about it in the past, of course. You know, like he said that his parents were not understanding of it at all. Why his parents didn't tell me that, I do not know. Right? Like I did a whole intake with them, never once mentioned, but okay. But yeah, so like it definitely helped to strengthen our relationship so we could actually do some good work together. I definitely needed a lot of supervision during that time as well, because it was kind of like one of my first cases like that. But I mean, yeah, it was a shock. It was a shock.
Are you ready for Lotus House for sure? I'll tell you that.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, I think Lotus House prepares you for like anything at all.
Honestly, you know, I tell people this. I barely made a dent on studying for my test to get my license, and I was like, oh, for sure I'm gonna fail. And I went into it knowing all of the answers because of Lotus House. So shout out to Lotus House for helping me with knowing my stuff and doing diagnoses or diagnosing people and all of that, because honestly, like you see a little bit of everything there. So if you want to ask us about experience, I'm always like, we have experience with all these things, and people are like, do you? And I'm like, no, you don't understand. We do. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like for sure there have been like a lot of shocking moments where people say things to you, and I do like to be honest when people say something and I'm just like, man, I like don't know which direction to go. Like I honestly will sit there and I'll be like, look, listen, like I'm going to do some research. I'm going to look at like different courses that I can take. Like this is not something that I've dealt with. Like, are you comfortable with us like figuring this out together? For the most part, people are like, yes. I don't know if they say yes for the same reasons that they told me it was okay to breastfeed during the sessions, but you know, I think honesty definitely is important, because man, it doesn't matter how long you've been working as a therapist. I think that every once in a while somebody throws a curveball at you and you're just like, all right, that's a new one for me. Let's figure this out together.
For sure, absolutely, and 1,000%. And I think that kind of brings us into our last segment, advice for new therapists and students. You know, I think if I were to go back and talk to myself as a newly graduate or about to graduate student, or again, like any other student out there, I think the biggest thing is that, exactly like Melissa said, like you're not going to have all the answers, right? Like the most you can do in those situations is to listen and to be supportive, right? You can talk to them about what you do know and what you don't know. Like that's part of also ethical guidelines as well. Like you shouldn't be treating anybody that you don't have the proper education for. But outside of that is that you can learn with them. You can tell them like, hey, we will understand this together. We will look into this. We will research this. We will do whatever it takes, and we will understand this together. Because at the end of the day, you know, it doesn't matter if you are the best therapist in the world. What matters is that your client feels connected to you, that they feel like you are there to support them. And I think that was kind of like the other piece for me as well that I had to learn from grad school to reality, is that I'm not going to connect with everyone. Melissa, I don't know if you felt that way, but like for me, I was like, that was like a big wake up call for me. I just like went out of school thinking, okay, I'm going to do this and we're going to do it this way and I'm going to help them and it's going to be fine. No, like it doesn't matter if you have the tools to help them. If they don't feel like they can connect with you for one reason or another, then they don't connect with you and you're not a good fit for them. And it's not like it's necessarily anything that you're doing wrong. It's just that some people are going to connect better with other people for one reason or another. And again, that was a big expectation. That was a big expectation I did not have. And that was a big reality check for me.
Honestly, yeah, now that you mentioned that, like nobody in school was like, hey, you just might not get along with the client and that's okay. So I feel like luckily it hasn't happened to me often. I feel like maybe like through twice I can like think of where like these people were just like very angry. One, because like they met me and they were like, "You're so young and you don't have kids," and like stormed off, and I felt horrible. I was like, "Oh my god, that's not my fault. I'm sorry." And then another time, this lady came on. I was already through telehealth, and she's like, "So what do you mean that I'm not immediately gonna feel better after this session?" And I'm like, "What? Like, what? Did you think I could just like magically like solve all your problems in an hour?" First of all, therapy isn't about like your therapist solving all your problems, but also like just an unrealistic expectation. And like as a new therapist, like that really like hit me, right? Like it was really hard for me to be okay with that. I felt like, oh my god, it's my fault. Like I did, like they make you feel like you did something wrong. You're like, dude, I can't control how old I am. I'm just trying to make some money so I can pay my bills. Like, I'm so sorry. So yeah, I don't know. It's I wish that we would have talked about that a little more in school. Like, hey, it's okay. Like you, the same way that you can't be friends with everybody, you can't be everybody's therapist, and that's fine. Like it doesn't matter how much information you know, how caring you are, how supportive you are. Like sometimes you just don't click with somebody, and maybe like their idea of what they want in a therapist, like it has nothing to do with you or your personality or how you conduct therapy. It's just they're looking for something different. And I've actually, I listened to a lot of mental health podcasts, and I was listening to one the other day where this person was African American. She's like, I've had a lot of white therapists, and finally having an African American therapist, like I realized how much my therapists weren't relating to me culturally in a lot of different ways. So even something like that, which is not something simple, obviously you want your therapist to relate to you in more than one way, like that makes a difference. And that has nothing to do with your personality. It's just you're going to have different experiences based off of who you are and how you identify and how you view the world. And so like don't take it personally is my 2 cents, because you don't know what somebody's looking for.
Yeah. I would also say, as advice to new therapists, new grad students out there is like, get to know your community better as well. And when I say community, I don't just mean like potential clients, but I also mean the therapists as well that work within your community, because there can also be this opportunity that if there is something that you cannot provide that client, or if there's something that they are specifically looking for, then you can then maybe also give that possible referral or something to the other therapist that you do know well. I'll say, for example, we had some referrals that came in that were specifically looking for older therapists, or like specifically looking for therapists that were married, outside of like just having the education of being able to do like couples or marriage counseling. No, like they wanted them to be married as well, and not just like married. I mean like married for a long time, right? So sometimes you'll have people come in with those certain expectations as well. Now, granted, I'm not saying like you always have to try and meet those expectations. Regardless, sometimes people will have like a different view of what therapy should look like in comparison to the reality of it, like what Melissa was mentioning earlier. But sometimes if there is a need that you could potentially meet by either for yourself or by for referring out for others, getting to know your community better gives you the opportunity to do that. I will also say as well that I had a similar experience like what Melissa was mentioning. I went into the nonprofit that I worked into straight out of grad school, working with families, working with children. And I saw a lot of this idea of, okay, so like my kid is behaving bad, I need you to fix him, right? Or like he's behaving bad, I'm going to leave him with you so you can work with him and I'm going to come pick him up in an hour, type of thing. And I was like, okay, again, not something that I really expected much straight out of grad school. I had like this whole idea of like, okay, this is what therapy is going to look like. You're going to have to work with the kid, and you're going to work with the parent. You're going to do all these things and keep it in a structural way and whatnot. And then again, people's personalities do not always match up with what are in the textbooks, right? What are within the theories. The theories are more generalized than anything, which again, that is something that I really had to learn in the reality of teaching therapy, is that like you're going to have resistance, or you're going to have Maybe people are going to have their own expectations of what therapy is going to look like as well. And sometimes it's going to be come fix my kid or come fix me within one session so that I have this instant gratification. I don't got to worry about anything else, right? Like that's a whole thing that you kind of learn as you go, that no matter all the advice somebody could give you, part of it is honestly just like getting into the thick of it and seeing how it is for you. What about you, Melissa? Any advice for our new grad students or new therapists out there?
I literally would just say, try your best not to have like this super. Okay, let me take it a step back. So when you're a new therapist, right? Of course, you're gonna go into it like planning your sessions a little bit, because I think there's a lot of fear of like, what if we run out of things to talk about? Like, what if they don't say enough and I don't know how to respond? So at least for me, and I hear a lot of people do this when they're coming out, like they'll have like things on the side and be like, okay, like these are things that we can work on. This is like that structure. I would say if the session isn't going according to plan, don't stress it. Like, not every session is going to be perfect. Not every session is going to, again, have like that amazing, those amazing breakthrough moments that I had mentioned earlier. It's just kind of like being easy on yourself and knowing you're a person too. And at the end of the day, all you're trying to do is help someone else and support somebody else in the best way that you can. So just make sure that you're not putting yourself down while you're trying to help other people. But that's what I got. Hopefully that's
and I will also say, I know that we've been obviously focusing on our profession here because like that's what we do, right? Like we can only focus on what we know. But I think in a lot of ways this can relate to a lot of people that are graduating from school and then have this certain expectation of what their career or their profession is going to look like right off the bat, right? And I think in that way, anybody can relate in that sense. So I would say at the end of the day, give yourself a break, do what you can, and don't be so hard on yourself. So if you can relate to anything that we said here today, please let us know. We would love hearing from our fellow unhinged followers, our fellow unhinged listeners, right? We would love to hear your stories. We would love to hear criticism, anything you want to give us, any sort of feedback would be amazing. You know, Melissa, do we know what we're talking about in our next episode?
Girl, I have no idea. I'm just happy to be here.
That's a no. That is a no. But, you know, if you follow us on social media, if you follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all those things, maybe we'll give you an update. Maybe we won't. Don't know for sure. We'll see what happens. But I can tell you for sure that you will be interested in whatever we say because we keep it real, we keep it raw, we keep it interesting. Majority of it is very much unscripted because we want you to just like hear who we are, you know, in our real lives outside of therapy, because we are all collectively unhinged together. So before we wrap up, let's remind ourselves you are doing the best that you can. You have a right to feel how you are feeling right now because your feelings are valid. Okay? Don't forget to follow us. Don't forget to leave a review. Do all those things. And then we will see you next time for more chaos, catharsis, and collective unhingedness. Stay sane, or at least try. Bye.
Bye.